To create a railing, you would have to go to the architecture tab, the circulation panel, and click on the railing. Click to create the first point. Click again to create the second point. Here, I'm just going to create a floor to make this a little bit more easy to understand. I'll go ahead and duplicate this railing 900 millimeters. Edit type, duplicate, I'll just name it new. From the type properties, the rail structure is where you can change the profiles of the regular rails. To add a regular rail, there are different profiles from which you can pick. If I go back into the type properties, baluster placement is where you can organize the spacing of your balusters. To add a new baluster, you can click on the already existing one, duplicate it as many times as you want, and change the baluster families. These are now different types of balusters. Going back to the properties panel, you can also toggle on and off the top rail. But sometimes doing this might actually create some errors because most times the balusters are constrained to the top rails. So if here, this is the top rail and I turn it off and I click apply, there's a warning here showing top reference is below bottom reference for one or more balusters. These balusters will not be created. When I click OK, all the balusters disappeared because the individual baluster family were constrained to that top rail. So I'm just going to undo that. You can also add handrails to your railing. I'm going to increase the hand clearance to make it more visible. This is the handrail. Let me delete this floor. Realistically, it should not be this far off from the railing. Now, most times when you create a stairs or a ramp, a railing is automatically attached to it. So let me go ahead, just create a default step here. You can also select these railings and change their type. If for some reason you accidentally deleted your railings, you can place it again on the stairs by going to the railing drop down, place on stairs or ramp. Alternatively, I can go to my level 0, then draw out the railing. So I'm just going to draw this roughly here. Select the railing and choose pick new host from here and choose your stairs. Sometimes you may want to create a railing that is sloped but not hosted on any other element. You should have at least 2 segments when drawing your railing. So a segment refers to, like, when I click first, click second point, this is a line, this is one segment. When I click again from the end point of the first line and click again, now this railing has 2 segments. If I go back into the edit mode, I can click on one of these segments, change slope to sloped, and adjust the height correction to 3000. You will see that the railing is still on the ground, but this particular segment, which I adjusted the height correction for, is sloping up. In most cases, you also want the base of the railing to slope together with the top of it. I can go back to my type properties here, and under the baluster placement, I'll click on it. The top of the baluster is hosted on the top rail element. So I'm also going to choose top rail element for hosting the base, but I'll create an offset of minus 1100 meters because that is the height of the balusters we have. If you look here, this is reading 1100. I also change this corner start and end post to be hosted on the top rail elements. When I click apply, if I go to the front view here, you will see that the top and the bottom of this second segment now slopes towards that 3 meters. I'll go ahead and delete this. Now for railings drawn with more than 2 segments, it gets a little bit complicated. So I'll go back here to my railings and I'm going to draw a railing using 4 segments. When I click off and go to 3D view, you can see that all of them are hosted on level 0 or on the ground. When I go back into the edit mode and I click the second one and I change the slope to flat, height correction to 3000, you'll see that that second segment is just lifted off of the ground and there's no slope because we chose the flat option. If I go back to the edit mode, click on that same segment and I change this to sloped, you will see that that second segment, which is this one, that had the height correction of 3 meters, does not actually slope anyway. It's still hosted on the ground. This is because the sloped option takes information from its neighboring segments. When you set any particular segment to sloped, the height at which it's sloped to is dependent on the height or the height differences of its neighboring segment. So if there is no height difference in the neighboring segment, that particular segment will not be able to slope to anywhere. Now, using the same railing, if I go back to my edit mode, this one that has a height difference, the neighboring segments are the first and the third, and they are both 0. So there is actually no height difference between the two neighboring segments of this particular one. If I change this to flat and change the height to 1 meter, you would see that the second segment actually slopes down from that height because now there is a height difference between the first and the third. That means there is a height difference between the two neighboring segments of this one that has a sloped option on it. Another point I would like to make is, for instance, if I go back to the edit mode, I'll change this back to 0. The second one is still at 3 meters. The third one, I'll change it to sloped, impute a height 5 meters. Now for this last one, I also change it to sloped, impute a height 600 millimeters. You would see that the railing actually slopes uniformly from the second segment to the last one. If I come here and try to measure it, you see that it's about 600. So the entire railing system is actually sloping upwards to the height of 600, which is the height correction of the last segment. It's ignoring the height correction I made to the second and the third segments. That is because the sloped option takes information from its neighboring segments, unless there are no neighboring segments, in this case of the fourth segment, which is the last segment. Railing extensions are the parts of the rail that extend outward at the beginning or end of a railing. So if I click on my railing and go back to my type properties here, I can go to top rail and choose an extension style. I'm going to select floor and I'm going to add a length of 1000. I'm also going to add the extension to the end. There's an additional extension of 1000 added to the beginning and the end of this railing system. You can edit this extension for a more custom look. To do that, you will have to hover over the extension and tab until the name of the top rail appears. Unpin it and you can go into edit the rail, edit the path, draw a new path. You can also do that on this side. To create a custom baluster, you would have to create a new Revit family with the baluster template. So I'm going to go up here to my files, new family. So when you open your baluster family template, there are already some set parameters. I can come in here to create I'm going to use a revolve. First of all, draw the boundary line. Then I'll draw the axis line. When I go into 3D view here, I'll go ahead into the edit mode, edit revolve, and lock the base to the reference level and the top to this other reference line, so that whenever we move this reference line, the top of the baluster actually moves with it. So if I load this into my project, I'll select this railing and I'm going to go to my baluster placement. You would see family 1, but if you save the Revit family before importing, the name which you used to save will appear here. So I can click on family 1 and click apply. It has switched out the previous baluster for the new one I just created. You can also change the start and end balusters to that same family. If I go back to my baluster family, I'm going to try and create a baluster that is more classical. So I can also load this into the project and overwrite the existing version. I'm going to 3D view. You can see our newly created balusters. I can also come here and increase distances to make it more spaced out. Can also remove these corner ones to a different one. That's it for baluster creation. You can actually model any form or any shape you want using the extrusion, blend, revolve, sweep, and swept blend options on the create tab. Creating a railing profiles follows almost the same steps. You would have to go to file, new family, and choose the railing profile template. Here we have the rail center line and the rail top. This will guide you on how to draw your profile. So if I go to create here, I'm going to create a line. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to make a more dramatic profile. After I'm done drawing the shape for my railing profile, I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Doesn't really matter. And I'm going to load this into my project. I'll select this rail, go to type properties, railing structure. I'm going to insert new rails here. This is the rail profile I just created, so I'm going to select it here. And I'm going to change this height to 500 and 700. For some reason, the profile is actually not working. It's just showing a square here, which is not actually what we drew. That means there's a problem with the profile. So I can go back here into my profile family. If I select everything now, I can see that there's an additional line here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that line. Now if I load this into the project again, it should work fine. It's a little bit difficult to say, but okay, yeah. So basically, it just takes the 2D shape we drew and extrudes it along a path. Can go ahead and add more views. If you have disjointed views, like as is shown here, you can actually adjust this by going back to the type properties of the rails, changing this rail connection to weld. I always keep it on weld because it looks neater. For this top rail, one is slightly above one. I can go into the top rail options here, change the transition from gooseneck to simple or none. None works too. Next, I want to talk about creating wall mounted railings. So to do that, I'm going to go to level 0 and create a wall. The idea behind the wall mounted railing is that it doesn't have any balusters or top rail, it only has a handrail. I'll go ahead and create a new railing. I'll duplicate this and call it wall mounted railing. For the rail structures, we'll remove all the regular rails. Make sure the list is empty. As you can see, those railings are gone. To remove the balusters, you would have to come to the baluster placement, select the baluster family and change it to none. When we click apply, you can see all the balusters are gone. Now come here to handrail 1 and I'll choose any profile and choose a position. I'm going to choose right. Now let's reduce the hand clearance, it looks ridiculous. Then we'll also disable the top rail. Now if we go to the right view, you will see that the only visible thing is the handrail because we disabled the balusters, the regular rails and the top rail. The handrail are attached to the walls by these elements called the rail supports or the handrail supports. For the last segment of the video, I'll walk you through the process of how I use railings to create fence or walk paths. So we're going to start with the fence first. I've opened a new Revit project. I'm going to come here and draw a railing. Then I'll go to File, New Family and create a new baluster family. Now I have my baluster family template open. I'm going to use extrusions because I want to draw on this reference line. I'm going to go to the front and pick the plane from there so that I can go back to the left and be able to draw on this view. Now I'm going to load it into my Revit project by clicking on this icon here. I'll duplicate this existing railing. In the baluster placement, I'll change the baluster family to the baluster we just created, which is fence palette here. I'll select it. Next, I'm going to create a rail. So I'll go in, create a new profile family, and I'll draw my shape. As you can see, I drew this rectangle on one side of the rail center line. So this particular rail profile, when I load into the project, will be towards the right hand side of the balusters instead of in the middle. Shall load into the project now. Select this railing. Under railing structure, I'll insert two rails. I'll make the height 300 and 600. Profile, and I'm going to choose fence plank horizontal, which is the profile I just created. As you can see, we have our rails here. Now to remove this top rail, I'll go back to my type properties. I'll change the top constraint from top rail to host, and I'll write an offset for what I want the height of my balusters to be. So I'm going to write in here 1 meter. So here I can now freely toggle off this top rail option. I'm going to do a different type of fence. Instead of creating new baluster families, I'm just going to edit the ones I've already created. But if you're actually doing this for a project, you would want to create new families every time you're trying to change the type of balusters. So I'm going to go back to this rail profile that I created initially, and I'm going to center it now. Shall load into the project now. Overwrite existing versions and all parameters. I can come here. I only need one of these, so I'm going to delete one. And I'm going to set the height of this to 0. Next, I'm going to create new balusters for this specific fence. After you're done creating your baluster family, you can load it into the project again. Then I'll go ahead and change the baluster family to the one I just created. The spacings are too close together, so I'm going to increase it. When you look at the edges here, it looks like these end posts are not actually sitting on the rails. To adjust that, go back to your baluster placement. change this to half of the width of the baluster. So in my own case, the width of the balusters are 200 millimeters. So I'll change this to 100. I'll also do that to the end post. Minus 100, not 100. Okay. Additionally, you can add more rails on these empty spaces. So I'm going to use existing rails already available. Now I'm going to show how I create footpaths using railing systems. I'm going to come back here to draw another rail on the ground here. I'll duplicate this. For this, I'm going to go ahead and create a new profile family. I'm going to go ahead, load into my project again. I'll select this new railing I drew, edit the railing structure. I'll delete all of this. I'll leave just one. Set the height to 0 and set the profile to footpath rail. So I'm going to apply that. I'm going to edit this baluster placement and choose none here. I'll also change the corner start and end post to none. You can actually leave it as it is, like this. When you create a similar railing with this, you can just actually draw footpaths as quick as possible. But to take it a step further, I like to also create balusters for these footpath families. So I'm going to go into File, New Family, Metric Balusters. I'm going to load this into my project. Then I'll click on this railing, edit type, baluster placements, and I'll choose the baluster we just created, which is footpath baluster. Now for the top offset, I'm going to type in a value of 10 millimeters, which is the height at which I want my balusters to stop. Distance from previous is the width of your balusters plus the spacing between the balusters. So in my own case, the width of my balusters are 1 meters and I want them to be spaced out by 500. So I'm going to type in 1.5, which is what is already there. So I'll leave it as that. You can see it has applied the balusters on this railing. There are a lot more use cases of railings in Revit. You just have to think outside the box. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. This is all I have for today's video and I hope you found something useful. Thank you and I'll see you on the next one.